Hello, and welcome to the How to Exit podcast, where we introduce you to a world of small to medium business acquisitions and mergers. We interview business owners, industry leaders, authors, mentors, and other influencers with the sole intent to share with you what it looks like to buy or sell a business. Let's get rolling. Hello, and welcome to the How to Exit podcast. Today I'm here with Juan. He's the CEO of Boopos. Boopos helps talented buyers acquire businesses and brokers close their sale mandates by committing flexible financing for buying e-commerce and software as a service businesses. Join us today as we discuss why create Boopos. What do they look for as funding criteria, and what are the key factors it takes to get an acquisition of an e-commerce or software as a service company funded? Welcome to the show, Juan, man. It's great to have you here today.
Thank you. Great to be here to run.
Uh, Awesome. So, where I always like to start is kind of getting people to know you, know where you're from, what you're up to and stuff. Can you tell us a little bit, like kind of your origin story? How did you get into mergers and acquisitions and stuff? And then we're going to jump right into Boopos. But first, let's just talk a little bit about kind of what drew you to create something like this. What is your background?
Makes sense. I mean, I like to say that I'm a finance guy, but at the same time, I'm a tech guy. I studied engineering, and I remember that my final degree project was an automated trading system. So we looked at public companies, we looked at number of metrics, and we had a system that invested automatically in these companies. So I've always had this idea of using data for making investment decisions. And then over time, fresh from school, I joined an investment bank. I joined Merrill Lynch. I spent a couple of years there. Then I joined a local private equity firm. And throughout all that time, I always had this feeling that there was a factor or a level of randomness in the way people access financing or get invested in their companies. And I always wondered why. Like it could be maybe you were not inspired on that investor meeting, or maybe you didn't have the right connections at the right time, or maybe your business was really good, but then something happened and you didn't get access to that financing. And I felt it was somehow unfair. So I always had that in the back of my mind. Then I joined a company called Cabify. So Cabify is like Uber for Spain and Latin America. I was the CFO there for like 8 years. And during that time, I got to raise like 500 million US dollars in funding for the company. And again, several times I had the experience of being about to close a funding round, and then something popped up in the last minute, and then it didn't happen. And again, this kind of also inspired me to get this. I mean, there was something to be done with this factor of randomness in getting financing. So at some point in time, but that was the end of 2020. I learned that they had all these big companies, Thrasio, Perch, etc., that were acquiring Amazon businesses by looking at metrics that they could extract from their marketplaces. And I thought, well, this is exactly what I was looking for the last 20 years. So my first thought in late 2020 was, let's start an aggregator and let's invest and let's acquire businesses just like Thrasio does. And then I got in touch with all these business brokers that were selling online businesses, and I learned a lot of what was going on there. So you had all these buyers looking at businesses. In many instances, they just didn't have access to financing because they were not like big firms like Thrasio. I myself experienced trouble raising money for this particular use. And I thought there's a big opportunity here. We can help a lot of people acquire a business if we're able to structure a financial product that is easy to use, that is quick, and that is actionable using an online process. So that's exactly why I started Boopos. So this came to life in early 2021. We started lending in around April 2021, and so far here we are. I mean, we've funded like 30 people now. They all are in the mood of acquiring more businesses, and we're getting rave reviews. It's apparently we're doing something that is definitely useful. So happy to be here.
Awesome. I appreciate you coming. So it's interesting when we first reached out. I had you and I had a little bit of an interview beforehand because I kind of wanted to see what it is you did and how it worked, mainly because inside of the space of mergers and acquisition, and when I say that, we're not talking about these billion-dollar deals, that the investment banks go after. My audience and the group, the people that I run with, we're that what we call a small to medium business, mergers and acquisitions. So, if you look at that, it's not uncommon. It's fairly easy to get funded for asset rich businesses. So you have the Small Business Administration, you have stuff like that. So if we have provable assets, um, and in some cases, even really solid contracts like recurring revenue contracts with the government and stuff, you can use those as collateral for certain types of funding to buy the business. But in your space, e-commerce stores, software as a service acquisitions and stuff, it's I guess the rumor kind of is you better have the money in your pocket, or you got to go raise private capital from investors to do it, because there wasn't, there just isn't that much institutional money laying around, geared up and ready to learn those spaces. So let's talk a little bit about kind of what you create. What did you see? You covered a little bit of it just then, but what did you see in the marketplace, and you know why create a solution to that? What's the scope of it? I mean, I'm sure you guys did some research on, like, what's the scale and scope behind e-commerce and software as a solution business for sale out there today.
Makes sense. I mean, in general, you said it right. SBA is looking for assets or is looking for personal guarantees. In many instances, we've seen e-commerce businesses and SaaS businesses qualify for SBA, but then you need to use. I mean, you need to give personal guarantees. So that's, let's say that you're borrowing $1 million, and then the business doesn't go well for whatever reason, then you'll end up paying that debt for life with your own assets. So I think that basically entrepreneurs, they take a lot of risk. They take low salaries for a long time. They just move from corporate careers or whatever they're doing, where they could earn a lot of money and have like a very predictable type of career, and they're betting a lot. So I guess that having this personal guarantee type of term in their financing is just not bearable. So that's one thing. And then the other thing is that in many cases, they just don't qualify for SBA at all because they don't have the assets, because they don't have the track record. We've seen some SBA lenders using cash flows rather than assets for financing, but still they're not comfortable with online businesses because they don't understand it. So that rewinding to how we started this business, we were going to be acquirers, right? We were going to acquire businesses. So we developed a whole process for analyzing businesses that was kind of the embryo of our current underwriting model. So when we look at businesses, when we underwrite businesses, we look at them as if we were going to buy them. So we look it from the same lens as a buyer. And that's super important because we take risks that maybe banks are not comfortable with. And so that's why we can help all these people.
So in the reason the SBA wants asset rich things, and even if you look at their loan programs, the length of the loan and the criteria, or the what do you call it, how the loan is structured, whether it's a 7-year or 30-year note, has a lot to do with what assets are attached to the business you're buying. So if you have real estate attached, you can do a longer loan and spread the payment out over more years than if it's just assets. But they're risk adverse in the fact that the reason they want assets is if you destroy this thing, they want something to sell to recover part of their part of this thing. On a SaaS company, and or a lot of e-commerce companies, if you buy this thing and you don't run it well and you run it into the ground, there might be some inventory on e-commerce, but not enough probably to cover the acquisition expense that was laid out. How do you guys protect yourself? Is it just you evaluate it as if you were buying it and make sure it's a great buy, or is there any other way you protect yourself inside of that?
So we take security over the assets themselves, which, as you said, they're not real estate assets. They're just it could be an Amazon account or tools, clients, etc., attached to the specific product that they're selling or tool that they're selling, software that they're selling. The IP, the brand, etc. That sounds like not very solid collateral, but in our, I mean, what we think of is that we have a covenant that says that if revenues go down 20% year on year for 5 consecutive months, then that's an event of default. And obviously, the first approach is to negotiate and to find an agreed solution, maybe a partial prepayment, a change in the terms. But if that doesn't happen in a short period of time, then we would take over the asset. So what we do is take over the asset before it gets damaged beyond repair, so we can just sell it straight away and recover a part of the of the loan, of the principal. Um,
So I'm an acquisition entrepreneur, and that's kind of the nickname that we're adopting in this space. I don't. I think uh, Walker Dable, guy that wrote "Buy Then Built," I think he might have coined the phrase. It might have been around before then, but I'm pretty sure that that's the first place that I've ever seen it is in his book. So acquisition entrepreneur, somebody who buys a business rather than build it. I'm out there looking at, say, Empire Flippers or Flippa.com or, one of the other sites. I find an e-commerce store that I'm really interested in. What is the criteria that I need to bring, or what do I need to show you guys? What do I need to present to Boopos to get your interest?
First of all, it's good to mention that we pre-approve a lot of deals. So if you find a deal at Empire Flippers, Quietlight, or whichever other broker that you look into, there's a good chance that we have already pre-approved it. So we have like a listings page where you have all the pre-approved listings from all the brokers, and then you can just go there and take a look at that. And I guess that if it's not pre-approved, it's because we just didn't it didn't go through our underwriting process. But other than that, what do we look into? With basically we have like two blocks. One of them is what we call the quality of revenues. So that's kind of different for an e-commerce from an Amazon or for a SaaS business. So for a SaaS business, it's related to the stickiness of the client base. So we look at cohort metrics. We look at how uh, how high or low is the churn, and how the users are being acquired and then retained. That's the type of thing. And then for Amazon businesses, it's more like positioning within the marketplace, like whether the products are well ranked, whether the competitors are having better reviews or worse reviews to the products that they're selling. These type of things are good predictors of continuity in revenues. So that's the first block. And then the second block is more like financial metrics. So we look at the P&L for the monthly P&L for the last 24 months, and we extract a number of metrics. So we take into account seasonality, growth, acceleration or deceleration in growth in the last few months. We take a look at margins. So it's kind of important for us to have businesses that have healthy margins that can repay our loans. And we look at advertising costs as a percentage of revenue. So businesses that have more than 15% of advertising costs as a percentage of revenue are that's usually a sign that their organic presence is not so strong. So we try to steer away of that. We need two years of track record. So in some instances, we've financed younger businesses, but in general, that penalizes a lot in the whole process. And I mean, we're looking for businesses that are profitable so they can repay us. We really don't need super high growth. It's 10 to 20% year over year is fine. And we look at businesses that have a very solid revenue base or revenue streams. That's the type of things we look into.
So, prior to the call, I guess I didn't do enough homework. I didn't see that you actually approve some of the listings. I see listings. I'm actually on your website now at boopos.com. And I actually see under the acquire a business, you have Amazon subscription based stuff in there, stuff from Empire Flippers, stuff from what's this, websiteclosers.com, and some other acquisition sources. So multiple pages of them. Let's say I'm going through this, I find something I like. Maybe I missed it and you just said that, but what's the criteria of as me as the acquisition entrepreneur? Right, you've approved the business. What is the buyer and the operator need to bring to the table for you to say that the buyer and operator is a match to the business?
Yeah, Ron, I must say that you did your homework. It's just that it's something very new. I think we just deployed a couple of weeks ago, and it's getting very good traction. But yeah, it's new.
Okay.
And yeah, I mean, what you said makes a lot of sense. I mean, we pre-approve the business, but then as part of the underwriting process, we have to look at the buyer. We don't underwrite the buyer from a financial perspective. I mean, we given that we're not taking personal guarantees, whether the buyer has good financial standing or not so good is not so relevant in our analysis, but we look at management skills, we look at commitment into the business, we look at how or their track record in owning, buying, operating businesses. This is the type of thing we look into. And we do that by having a personal interview and going through all these topics and interacting with the buyer over time and throughout the process, and making sure that we're partnering with the right person, with the right operator.
Awesome. Now, you've got the right buyer, you got the right operator. I noticed earlier you said something about, you protect yourself by making sure there's not a significant decline in the business. So, is there a quarterly reporting? Do you guys have access to my financials on a quarterly basis, a monthly basis, or what does that look like?
So before closing the deal, or basically at closing, you will have to connect your merchant accounts. So we will have
Hmm.
access to revenues. Actually, we're a revenue-based lender, so we will charge a percentage of revenues.
Hmm.
So we will track revenues every month. That's one thing. And then we will also ask for a connection to the bank account, so we can take a look at all the statements and movements of the bank account. So with those two things, that's good enough in terms of reporting, etc. You wouldn't need to worry about sending us financials every time. That's good information. What we also ask is for the annual tax return, and if there's an audit, then audited financial statements. Usually, at this size of business, there's no audit, but yeah, that's something else that we need.
So awesome. So we have a lot of new, I wouldn't say new in as far as business goes, but new as far as acquiring a business. Listeners, people who are just getting into the acquisition entrepreneur space. They've run businesses before. They might have even sold or exited, or they have a current business and they want to acquire to grow. Um, what what inside of this process would you say indicates you've already pre-approved these, so I assume that you like these businesses. But how would you, if somebody was wanting to grow their business through acquisition and maybe add a software as a service to their company, or add one of these, Amazon brands or e-commerce stores to their company, what is a good selection criteria? You're looking at this through the eyes of an investor. What do you guys see as makes a good e-commerce store?
First of all, I guess that there has to be a match between the experience of the buyer and the e-commerce store itself. For example, we recently lent to a woman who was running a content site related to motherhood and children, etc., and she was planning to buy a stroller and pushchair e-commerce store. So it made a lot of sense because she was going to direct traffic from her content site to the e-commerce store, and she had experience in that segment. So I guess that, and that's something that future business owners and buyers usually tend to do very well. Like they like to focus on businesses they can manage, and then they can you know take to the next level. From our perspective, we like to partner with that type of people and make sure that there's a match between the business and the buyer. And from the business standalone, so what does a good e-commerce look like? Usually they have a good SEO positioning, they have a good authority in terms of the things that they're selling, and the way you would get to it organically. They usually have recurring clients, and it depends on the product a little bit. It could happen or it could not. But if you connect to the Shopify account and you see that there's a lot of recurring sales, then that means that the customer base is loyal, and then will probably keep on buying products from the same store. So I guess that those are some factors that are good predictors of a good investment. And we use that in our underwriting process. But it will depend on a specific business.
So inside of this space, is there any, inside of the e-commerce and software as a service space, are there any things out there that you would say are red flags? Like if we were out there, not looking at your pre-approved list, but if we were out there and we find something or somebody comes to us and they want to sell us a business, is there anything that said, is just a huge red flag that would tell you that probably shouldn't look at that?
I mean, I mentioned profitability before, and this is, I mean, I guess that there are businesses that can be turned around, which is fine. But I mean, if you have very thin profitability, then it's going to be a challenge to repay our loan. So we don't want to. Basically, we want to make sure that we lend to people that can pay, and so profitability is important. Also, because if you want to grow the business, you will need some room for investing in marketing and buying additional inventory, and while we can provide follow-on financing for that, it's useful to have profitability. So that would be one of the key factors. Then, I mean, I guess that we're pretty flexible. We've kind of approved many different types of businesses. It also worth mentioning that there's some categories that we just cannot lend on. So supplements, jewelry, this type of products. Also, low price electronics, where there's a lot of competition from Chinese providers. That's the type of thing that we cannot lend on, and it's usually because it's hard for us to assess the what I call before the quality of revenues block of our underwriting model. Because in the end, supplements come and go. It's kind of hard. So that would be something that would be a no go for us as well. But I guess that, I mean, these are not businesses that are essentially bad. I mean, I wouldn't tell anyone not to buy that business just because we cannot lend on it. It's just that you will have to find another lending financing source, right?
Right. So I clicked on the amount of your financing so that I can see what the biggest one is there. There's a couple on here that are, you guys are willing to finance over $1 million on, but the asking price on that is 5.5 or 5.25, 6.8 million. And it looks like your financing is one. What is the assumption that, you know, that the rest of the money is coming from? Is that from the buyer? Is that from a seller financing structure? Or what is your expectation of the remaining balance coming from?
And that's a good question. So basically, we limit it to 1.2 million. That's our maximum lending amount, and that means that for bigger deals, we might not be as useful as for smaller deals. Over time, we expect to overcome that barrier and be able to lend up to 3, maybe 4 million. So these deals, we could potentially in 6 months, maybe 12 months, lend the full amount. In the meantime, we just produce these term sheets because they're sometimes useful, actually. We've seen buyers that have a lot of equity, and then a deal can be arranged with a seller note plus some equity plus our loan. And even in some instances, we might end up being compatible with other sources of financing. We could even be a partner for an SBA loan. We could be junior to that if obviously there's a big amount. So let's say that you have a 3 million loan from SBA, then you can add 1 million from us as a junior type of lender, and then 1 million in equity. That's something that could be done. So I guess we're flexible, and we try to adapt to every situation. To be fair, Ron, in most instances at these bigger deals, we end up not lending because they usually find another sources of funding that are kind of well structured for these type of bigger deals.
I asked that for that's I wanted to see how flexible you guys were, and that's exactly the answer I was kind of looking for. Is, you know, it's the deal structure. A lot of times, when you're out there working these deals, you'll find yourself where you're almost there. Like on these, the asking price is 5.25. You got the seller to do a seller carryback for, four of it, and you got two guys coming on for 500K a piece. You're at five, and now you need just a little bit to push you over the line. So the fact that you guys are flexible and can work in that realm is it's very beneficial to the guys out there doing the work, like myself and some other people. What are one of my favorite things to always ask is, are there any like kind of preconceived notions or like I want to say false beliefs in the e-commerce and SaaS space? Um, I mean, one of the beliefs I have is SaaS software as a service are grossly overpriced, meaning that the sellers of software as a services are wanting, multiples that are just absurd in every other market. What is there any out there like is that you can say, hey, there's great deals in this space anyway, or you know are there other kind of myths or disillusions, as I might want to refer to them in this space that you guys know better?
Yeah, actually, you mentioned an important one. I mean, if you look at e-commerce deals, they usually price at maybe 2.5, 3 times, sometimes even 4 times profit or SDE. If you look at SaaS businesses, they might be priced between 5, 6 times. So you're paying a premium for that. Is that something that doesn't make sense or is absurd? I don't think so, because many of these software businesses have a very, very sticky client base. So that's something that no one can take away from you. And then there's, in many instances, we're seeing a lot of growth in them. So that's something that obviously you have to factor in the price. What is true is that in many instances, some people believe that just because they have a SaaS, they deserve a 7 times multiple, and that's not the case. I guess that you have to differentiate between good SaaS businesses and not so good SaaS businesses. So that's definitely a misconception that we have to work with, and we have to talk through. Another misconception that we've seen quite often is that just because a deal seems a little bit too big for you, it just cannot happen. If you have a motivated seller and you're motivated to buy the business, you can end up striking a deal. So basically, we've seen sellers having seller notes up to 30 to 40% of the price of a business, and I know that's not the market usually, but in some instances we've seen that. We've seen lenders pushing things and providing bigger amounts, and we've seen buyers finding equity for a business that they really think it can work. So I guess that in some instances it feels like don't want to pursue this opportunity because I don't think I'm gonna make it. But in the end, if you're motivated, if you like the business, if you know the business, and you think and you have a business plan, that there are chances are high that you're gonna find funding.
I can see that. So you guys have been around since, what do you say, like 19 or 20? What was the year you started?
Late 2020. We were
Okay.
live in early 2021. We started
Okay. So,
lending in
so,
early
so you guys
2021.
started late 2020. You got up and live in 2021. So right at a year now, you're working on your second year. Um, are you guys? How many deals have you actively funded at this point? Are you willing to share?
We funded 30 people, 30 different buyers, and a number of them have repeated or are looking to repeat.
So that's pretty good. If you look at a lot of what other venture capitalists and stuff like that do, somebody can correct me if I'm wrong, but 30 deals in a year seems like quite a bit to analyze, evaluate, and do. So that's pretty good volume. You're actively actually looking and funding businesses. Now, I noticed you also said they can actually get funding for growth. So you do funding for the acquisition of the company, you do funding for growth. What are the other is that the two main things you focus on, or is there other stuff you?
Those are the two main things we focus on, and I would say that our core product and our focus is acquisition financing. So, but if you're buying like an Amazon or an e-commerce store, in many instances you will require follow-on financing because you grow in the company, you need to buy inventory. So it makes sense for us to structure like a follow-on growth loan. Sometimes we have also seen people who are actively looking to buy businesses and they already own a business, so they need a growth loan for that business while they seek to acquire more businesses. So again, in that situation, it also makes sense to provide a growth loan. But yeah, the core and our strategy is all kind of revolving towards or revolving around lending for acquisitions.
Okay. What are the like? Walk me through the process. I reached out to you. I'm a buyer. I'm looking for one of these. I reached out to you. I fill out. Is it all online? I fill out forms online. There's an interview. What kind of questions would you ask me as the buyer? And then when you do the, so let's start with that. This is what questions would you? I sometimes stack questions. Let's just do one at a time. What kind of questions would you ask of me on that first call as a buyer? Like, kind of walk me through that.
So I guess that, I mean, there's two things here. One is the process with our origination team, which is a live process where you interact with the origination team, and that's kind of like an ongoing process throughout the whole acquisition. And then on the other hand, you have our online app for applying online and providing all the documents, etc. And they can just proceed at the same time, more or less. So usually the process starts with an interview with our origination team, and that's just for kind of setting a little bit the way we work, explaining how the product works, explaining how we interact throughout the whole acquisition process, and we also get a sense of the background of the buyer, the amount of money that he's willing to invest. And I'm talking about our equity. We need buyers to invest alongside us. Um, we look at their experience. So it's kind of what we call a pre-qualification to make sure that we can partner with that buyer. And then comes the online process, which is it's pretty straightforward. You can just apply online. It's like a very linear process where you just upload the P&L for the last 24 months, maybe an info memo that you have from a broker, some other information that you have gathered in your process of understanding the business. And if you have an LOI, that you can upload the LOI. But usually most of the buyers apply before sending an LOI to make sure that they have access to funding and make sure that they can meet and close a deal before sending an LOI. And then throughout that process, there's usually more interaction with our origination team. And that's where we end up proceeding with an interview where we ask the type of questions that I said before, like, have you managed the business before? What type of business have you managed before? Do you have a business plan for this particular business? And what type of due diligence do you expect to perform? What type of resources are you going to commit in terms of managing this business? That's the type of questions that we ask. But I guess that it's a more kind of interactive or organic process. There's a number of conversations throughout the process, because in the end, acquiring a business is a complex process, and there's a lot of interaction. There's a lot of back and forth, and we use all those small interactions to understand whether we're partnering with the right person or with someone that we're going to be able to deal with for the next 5 years. Because in the end, that's what we look into.
I was about to ask that. What is the structure of the? You say they were revenue based loans, so you're taking a percentage of revenue to pay back the loan. What do you see kind of as the? And I bet it's done off risk and stuff. But what is the range of like kind of interest rate or how that works and duration of the loan?
So we are targeting a 5-year average repayment period, and an absolute multiple of 1.6 times. So that gives you more or less the idea of the annual absolute return that we're looking to, which is between 12 and 15%. We charge monthly installments, so we collect revenue every month based on a percentage of the revenues of each month, and the percentage of revenues depends on the amount that we're lending, depends on the margin of the business, so it's not a set amount, and yeah, that's more or less how it works.
So you set those based off of the revenue of the business and the profit margins, so that I mean, because if you said 25% of revenue and you're not making a 25% profit margin, the company
Mm.
just can't survive. So it looks like you evaluate what basically stays in the business, and you take a percentage of what you call it, net revenue or whatever, or net profit instead of gross, somewhere in that range, right?
So yeah, so a business that is making 25% profit, I
Hmm.
mean, we would just target taking between 15 and 20% maximum royalty every month, just to make sure that there's enough cash flow and enough headroom for making the business grow.
Okay, so. I came to you. We did our first interview. We buy the business. You guys fund it. I'm submitting. You know, my you guys have access to my internal systems or whatever. You can see my revenue and stuff. Are there any other things that you do for these individuals? It looks like there's a play to, as you're pre-approving these. Does your algorithm or does your team actually identify areas where, hey, we've got another one out there. There's another one available that would really help you grow. It's right in your target space. Do you encourage the purchase of other like similar businesses to help these guys grow?
That's something that we do. Yeah, that's something that we do. We're implementing an algorithm to do it automatically, but right now it's our team just looking at businesses that come our way, and we have a comprehensive database where we can see the interests of each of our clients, and we're using that data for sending businesses that way. Because I mean, I would say that 90% of the people we work with are planning to buy. They're not aggregators. They just don't want to aggressively buy tens of businesses, but they like to be business owners, and they are definitely motivated to own two, maybe three related businesses, our portfolio of maybe up to five, and so that's why actually we get very good feedback of the product, so it makes sense for us to push businesses that way.
Well, and it's an excellent way for them to grow, right? Let's just pick a niche. Like if I had a holistic, organic type of natural product that's in the luxury space, and you come across somebody who's selling something in that space, it fits my luxury, buyers. They like high end products. It's natural, organic, or some all it fit in that holistic kind of view. It only makes sense if I'm successfully running something for you and or not for you, but for me, and I'm paying you on a regular basis and it's growing, that you'd want to, help me grow even further by going, hey, there's another one here. You should probably pick this one up, right? Because I've got a proven track. I mean, if I was sitting in your shoe, I'd want to loan more money to the guys with proven track records, right? Like they're up, they're
Totally.
running. Here's another one. Let's put this in there, and so. Does Boopos do that type of advisory, or is you? I know you're talking about algorithms and stuff. Are you currently doing advisory services in this space, or is it pretty much just loaning and monitoring?
Our business model is lending. That's where we make the money. But we do it. We obviously do that. We send businesses to people where we feel there's an opportunity, because we get the chance of lending more. And as you said, we want to lend on people who have good track record. So it makes sense for us, but we don't charge any type of advisory fees. We leave that to the brokers. We like to partner with brokers, and that's we're in our place. The brokers are in their place, and that's the way it should be. Um,
Let's talk about source of funds for just a second, because I know I have myself and other people have source of funds to invest. Um, do you guys, invest your own money? Do you borrow money from the banks? Did you do like a raise a fund? What is the source of money that you're lending out, and how do you grow that? Because over time, it's going to grow through interest and other stuff. But I mean, are you still bringing in investors, or how does that work?
So we closed a funding round in December 2021. So
Hmm.
we have VC investors in our cap table. That's part of the equity, and that's how we finance our company. But then for funding the loans, we partner with a UK hedge fund called Fasanara. So
Hmm.
these guys are specialists in fintech, in lending businesses, and they set up a specific structure for us. So we can, at this stage, we would be able to lend up to 200 million in the next 12 months. We have to be careful with that, but these guys are very good partner. They have billions of assets under management.
That's awesome. So as long as they meet the criteria, you guys can create the volume. So that's what I was going to like. Uh, where I was headed with that question is, are you going to run into a point where there's more people wanting to borrow than you can lend? But with a backer like that, looks like you guys can, if you're careful and meet their criteria on a regular basis, you can continue this. Moving forward, there's always a question about that. Like for me, anyway, when I'm looking at a company that's been around for less than 5 years, is what is the risk that you know I acquire a business, I set up a structure with you, and all of a sudden you have trouble, right? Is there
Mm.
anything is there anything inside of the notes or anything like that where they could get called due if you guys are in trouble, or is it just structured as it's 5 years? Kind of like I own or finance a lot of houses. If any at any given time, if I get hit by a bus, whoever gets those notes has to live up to the notes. The contracts are there. If somebody acquires them, assumes the rights of them, or anything else through my trust or whatever, they still have to adhere to that contract. What's the risk to a acquisition entrepreneur if something happens to Boopos? Is it contractually sound?
I mean, we are a principal lender, so we are the main counterpart and well, the only counterpart. And I guess it's kind of pretty standard terminology in terms of the legals. So what happens is if something happens to Bupons, in principle, nothing. You still have to pay your debts as is in the contract. That's the way it works.
Yeah, I expected that, but you have to ask, right?
Yeah, no,
So
no way to get rid of us so
no,
easily.
I wasn't worried more about the um, not having to pay it if something happened to you guys. I was more concerned that whoever acquires you can change the terms of the deal, right?
No, but that's not the case. I mean, our contracts are fairly standard and they follow
Yeah.
standard practices in lending. So
Yeah, you would have had to have specifically added something into the contract to allow it to be adopted to a new buyer. So that's why I was asking. So
no.
we've been on here for about 40 minutes. We're hitting close to that top of that hour stuff. Is there any key hot points you like we should have talked about, or things that you feel that we really need to let the listeners know about?
Well, I guess that the market is pretty hot. We still see a lot of people. I mean, that's something that we might want to discuss. The opportunities that are out there, right? We still see a lot of people buying businesses and trying to buy businesses. The online space is super hot. And I mean, something that I'm experiencing is the interest of the buyers shifting from asset class to asset class. For example, we get a lot of inbound requests for content sites. That's something that we didn't see before. We're not getting so much interest for Amazon, and I guess that there's a reason for that. It was super hot a couple of years ago, and now it's not so much. But still, they're very sound businesses, and if I were actively looking to buy businesses, I would definitely look into buying Amazon businesses. And this is the type of thing that I get to discuss all the time with the business brokers, right? How the space is evolving and what the trends are in acquiring businesses.
So if you've listened to previous shows, you already know I have a bias against Amazon businesses for the sole purpose of I don't want to invest in anything or put my all my eggs in anybody's basket where there's a single or sole decision maker who could ruin my day, right? If you look at a lot of the content made for there was a 10, 15 years ago now, it's been a long time. Um, there were a lot of these made for AdSense type of businesses. I have friends that were doing really good with that, and then Google changed their algorithm, and these guys were nearly broke. I have friends who had some really cool e-commerce plays that were 100% affiliate marketing. A lot of them are using Amazon. One of them I can think of right now, um, I won't say his name on here, but he had an e-commerce type of website where he did reviews on sound equipment, audio equipment, and stuff like that, and was making high six figures with his Amazon affiliate. They changed their structure, go from I want to say it was like 10% to 2%, and he's absolutely it barely covers his marketing cost. Right? It really literally destroyed him. What is your gut feel on like buying a business like Amazon, an Amazon store, and having the risk that they just decide to take that product in house and sell one of their competing products with it, or for some reason or another, change policies, rules, or whatever, and make it really expensive for somebody owning the store to succeed.
Yeah, I had a few scary stories too. I guess that I had more scary stories at the content space than at the Amazon space itself. In I mean, the Amazon marketplace is huge. They have made changes, but it would just kill themselves, right? Like Amazon just pushing too much on their suppliers or the sellers would be just it wouldn't be beneficial for them at all. So I don't think there's so much of a risk. But yeah, we've seen changes in the rules of the marketplace, and we've seen sellers needing to adapt to those rules. But we haven't seen that many sellers being squeezed out of the marketplace itself. Whereas we've seen, yeah, changes in the way advertising works that have made businesses disappear from one day to another, and that's why we're very cautious with content businesses. We're starting to explore them. We want to underwrite them at some point in time. We financed, I guess, one as an experimental type of loan, and so we can learn a little bit. Um, but we still need to learn a little bit more about how to protect yourself against this kind of black swan type of events.
It's interesting is you had the same answer the last three guys I brought that question to because they were like, yeah, you got to buy Amazon stores. I'm like, yeah, Amazon could squash, step on your big toe anytime they want. They all three answered, and you just answered pretty much the same thing, that the Amazon marketplace, that these stores are such a significant portion of their revenue. If they harm those individuals, it would hurt themselves like considerably. So I get that. So maybe it won't be overnight, but I'm just still concerned about they make gradual changes that benefit them more. Like a good example would be the fulfillment by Amazon, right? Fulfillment by Amazon is fairly pricey. I know I've been talked to two different people that are like familiar with the aggregator space, and some of the aggregators out there, the reason they're doing what they're doing is they're buying these businesses that do fulfillment by Amazon, and the aggregator itself has its own logistics and own um, ability to do fulfillment. And that's how they push the profit margin way up. They buy very profitable stores that are using fulfillment by Amazon, and then they take over the fulfillment side of it, and push their profits up. Um, but you know, so
On the
uh,
on the other hand, usually Amazon tries to give more visibility to FBA products rather than to FBM products. So it's a twofold type of decision, right?
do you ask your like your Amazon brands and your Amazon stores to actually do anything like have a second like a Shopify store, or you just let them run the way they were set up?
Yeah, we're not operators. I mean, we don't want to get in the middle of the
Okay,
strategy, and we let them decide. Yeah.
cool. Well, we are at close to the top of the hour and stuff. Is there any last thoughts or any things you want to say? I do want people to know that we have your connection information on the screen, and uh, that's Juan. And I'm not going to even pretend to say your last name for me.
Garcia Braschi.
Okay, and then
Right.
I'm gonna spell it for everybody. So, or yeah, if you want to find him on LinkedIn, it's the standard HTTPS www dot linkedin.com/in, and it's JIGARCIAB, right? That's his thing. Or you can probably search for uh, Juan, which is Juan, and then his last name is Garcia, Garcia, and then Braschi. I butcher everybody's name, so I'm not going to try yours. I just know I'm not going to spit that out right. I don't.
But
It's funny.
they could just also Google Boopos, right? And
Yeah,
they
Boopos.
will
Yeah, and that's
easily
that's the
find that.
thing, and that's exactly how it sounds. It's Boopos, Boopos.com,
Mhm.
and I would recommend you guys, if you're listening to this and you're even curious, go dig through that list of companies they've pre-approved and see. I mean, there's quite well, you got 5 or 6 pages of them on there right now, and
Mhm.
take a look. And it's with Empire, Flippers, Dragon Flip, a lot of the name brands out there, websiteclosers.com. You have a lot of those already pre looked at, and you're interested in funding them if you meet the right operator for it. So I would recommend the listeners go there, take a look. I'll put both your contact information, LinkedIn, and your Boopos link in the show notes, and in the description of the show when it comes out. So I appreciate you for being on here, man. I really do.
All right. Thank you, Ron. It was a great pleasure to chat with you. And yeah, happy to be here. And I hope it helped potential buyers and business owners to
I think
uh,
it will. I think
learn
you
about
got
it. Yeah.
I think it fulfills the need in the space, and it opens people's eyes, right? A lot of people think that e-commerce is hard to fund, software as a service is hard to fund. They're going to have to go the private, hunt down private investors and stuff. Now they know they've got somebody else on their side that's willing to look at it and help fund it. And they can still do private investors. They may even need to do a little bit of private investor and you guys, or multiple sources to get the deal done. But knowing resources like you guys exist is will I think it'll open opportunities to a lot of people that might have written off, buying an e-commerce store or software as a service because they didn't think they had enough funds to do it on their own to be significant. So I think this would be a good win.
I hope so. I hope so. We're here to
All right,
help.
I appreciate you, and that's the show today. So
All
everybody,
right.
hang out for just a second afterwards, and we'll wrap it up. The Investors and Entrepreneurs Professional Mastermind. The Investors and Entrepreneurs Professional Mastermind combines the traditional peer-to-peer mastermind introduced first in Napoleon Hill's famous book, Think and Grow Rich, with accountability partnering, where your peers help you ensure that you set goals, take actions, and get results. If you want to scale, blow past roadblocks, and achieve success faster than you might think is possible, I suggest you take a visit over to tiepm.com. That's tiepm.com and check out the Investors and Entrepreneurs Professional Mastermind.